Well, the U.S. State Department began firing hundreds of employees today as part of a huge reorganization from the Trump administration, according to State Department officials. The mass layoffs are expected to include about 1,100 civil servants and about 250 foreign service officers. That's based on an internal memo seen by NBC News. The State Department press secretary explaining why.
You have a size and people working on things that are not within the framework of the modern age. When something is too large to operate, too bureaucratic to actually function and to deliver projects or action, it has to change.
Let's bring in NBC's Vaughn Hilliard, who's been following this. So, Vaughn, this is about a 15% cut to the State Department workforce. Just how big of a change is this going to make in our diplomatic capabilities?
Right. You're talking about more than 250 foreign service officers that are looking at departing. You're talking about more than 1,100 civil workers within the State Department here. This comes, of course, after USAID was dismantled, which was the U.S. government's main humanitarian aid organization. And this year for the State Department, you're looking at thousands, upwards of 3,000 individuals getting notices that they were to be out the door here by this evening. And this was a memo that we were told that went out to certain employees at 10 o'clock here a.m. today. When you're looking at the exact parts of the State Department where individuals are being targeted for these cuts, you're looking at particularly the offices impacted that include human rights, refugees, human trafficking, women's issues, environment here. These are layoffs that are widespread at a time that many are arguing that U.S. diplomacy overseas is paramount. And yet within the State Department, under the direction of Secretary Marco Rubio, like we have seen across other federal agencies, now that the courts have effectively stepped aside and allowed these reductions in forces to proceed, you are seeing the Secretary of State and those in leadership making this move. And you're looking at these major offices that are going to be seeing here over the course of these hours, individuals that are going to be leaving the department.
So essentially what you're talking about, because a lot of people just look at it and they say, well, you know, there's government layoffs. We can't believe it. Oh, my God, this is crazy. But first of all, this happens in private organizations all the time because they have to make sure that they're solvent. But what a lot of people need to understand is that the State Department basically conducts and they're responsible for U.S. foreign policy and relations. They advise the president. They talk about international organizations, United Nations, so on and so forth. And what the Trump administration has found is that they're not actually even doing their job to the expected capacity that they're supposed to. So what we are basically experiencing here in the United States of America is right-sizing the government, all right? We are now getting ourselves to a point to where in the same way that private organizations, because we need to be running the federal government similarly to a business because we have to be even more cognizant of how taxpayer dollars are spent, and it does not exist to just provide people a job. So if you're talking about U.S. foreign policy and relations and advising the president and negotiating treaties and representing the U.S. in international organizations like the United Nations and providing various services to both the U.S. citizens and foreigners, then you have to start evaluating, are we truly putting Americans first by allowing for these people to just exist, or should they be productive? Because I don't believe that we need a large U.S. department that then talks about what's happening when it comes to international or foreign relations. Why aren't we then right-sizing the government to ensure that technology is able to assist us in making sure that we run efficiently instead of we just having a bloated organization where you really don't get anything done? You've seen the department head of the U.S. Department, and they said nothing really gets done. There's nothing really happening on that level that would then affect U.S. citizens in a negative way if we don't then start laying people off and making sure that people are actually being productive instead of just having a job. The U.S. government doesn't exist just to make sure people have a job. it exists to where it cuts the barriers for people to be able to do what they need to do inside of the United States of America, whether that's capitalistic, whether it's, making sure that you get whatever disabilities, or, making sure that the roads are paved, or US policy and all of this other stuff. But we don't need to just have bloated government for the sake of having bloated government, just to make sure that people forever have a job. That's not what our government agencies are supposed to be there for. And so when Trump finally got the clearance from the U.S. Supreme Court to make sure that he has the ability to right-size the government, that's exactly what he's doing, instead of just allowing for it to be bloated. Let me pivot over into, because today, I'm liking to go to different organizations instead of just going to Fox or just be going to, local organizations. I want to actually have conversations abroad, right? So now we're going to go over to MSNBC and see what they have to say about it, because we know that they're always against whatever Trump does.
We begin with the mass layoffs underway as we speak at the State Department. I want to bring in NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell. I understand, Andrea, those termination notices began hitting inboxes this morning. What do we know about it?
Well, frankly, I've been covering the State Department officially since 1994. Unofficially before that, as I covered different administrations from the White House and from the Hill. And I have to tell you, this is devastating. In a statement, the organization that represents foreign service officers, the diplomats who are also, involved in this, as well as the civil service employees, each of those groups have their own protections. Those are being ignored and overruled by the Supreme Court decision, lifting a federal court injunction that had prevented this from happening. There's been a lot of uncertainty, so some people are expressing relief that at least now they know. But in terms of the last 6 months, according to the Association of Foreign Service Officers, the diplomats, 20% of our diplomats have been eliminated, and they're not eliminated by decisions on merit or on language facility or on experience or on where they are serving in the world. There are 2 wars going on and a lot of crises around the world. They are just eliminated across the board without any kind of attention to how they've achieved what their merit is, what their experience levels are. And just to give you an example, the Afghan reload.
Then that means that they're getting right size based off of without bias, right?
Relocation service is being eliminated. Well, that was legislated by Congress to not go out of business until 2027 for people who had worked in Afghanistan with our military, with our State Department, with our CIA, with the intelligence people. And many of those people are still stranded in Doha and other places in Pakistan, unable to get here. They haven't been properly visaed. So they have to return to Afghanistan, to the Taliban. Having worked with the Americans during the war, you know what they face. They face jail or execution. So there's just so much involved here. And just one, final example. Right now, there is, terrible starvation and lack of fuel, lack of medical care in Gaza. And the State Department has been giving blanket support for this American and Israeli supported humanitarian relief organization that's operating in 4 sites in southern Gaza only. And there is widespread reporting, not only by the UN and by other agencies, but reporting by credible news sources as well as our own teams on the field in Gaza of horrific conditions. And the State Department doesn't have the bandwidth or the will to have real facts coming from the ground. They just keep saying, well, meals are being distributed when people are.
So they don't have the bandwidth to say that real facts are coming from the ground. I would love to know what you guys think about this whole situation. I think it's a good thing that we're right-sizing the government. One of the things that the Republican Party and the Conservative Party that I support and that I actually voted for was that we right-size the government, because we don't need to be spending our tax dollars on things that's not meaningful. The Department of Government Efficiency is there doing their job, even though they're not getting as much visibility now. But let me know what you guys think inside of the comments. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. Teach Hanley, 40% off your first order plus 20% off for life. This happens in regular business all the time. This happens in regular business all the time. This should not be a shocker. Nobody tripped when Microsoft said that they was doing a second round of layoffs of 9,000 employees.